So I've been wanting to make a film of Ulysses since I first read it in college. And the reason is, I think, because it's like the most ambitious thing I'd ever discovered. It's so ambitious. It's like trying so hard to do something so high and difficult. I really like art that sort of like elevates the human and like takes you to like a higher version of yourself. And James Joyce is very high. Ulysses is the highest thing I've ever seen. And Haley was like, hey, they're going to do this play of Ulysses for the centenary of the publication of Ulysses. And I was like, oh my God, I wanted to do something. If I'd known, I wanted to do a play. I love the idea of doing a play of Ulysses because one thing I hate is adaptations. I hate adaptations. And I hate historical period things where they're like, this is what it was like. I hate that because it wasn't like that. And I think it's important to be honest and to be like, we don't know what it was like. We don't know anything. All we can do is like point to what we think it might have been like and just like reference it. But to make it like this is what happened is, I think, morally wrong. So I didn't want to make an adaptation of Ulysses. Like, that's just wrong. And the ones that have tried have been wrong and embarrassing. They've embarrassed the human race. So I wanted to not do that, but elevate the human race. So if we did a play of Ulysses, then clearly it's not an adaptation of Ulysses. It's like it's something Brechtian. It's something with distance. It's something that doesn't pretend to be the thing. It's just pointing to the thing. And then if we made a film about trying to make the play of Ulysses, that's okay. That works. That's honest. There were 30 days before Bloomsday. And I'm like, how could I write a play of Ulysses and cast it and stage it and perform it and film it in 30 days? It's impossible. She said, isn't the impossible exactly the kind of thing you try to do? Like, isn't that your thing? And I was like, it is my thing. The impossible. It's Joyce's thing too. Ulysses was impossible. And he did it. It took him 7 years, but he did it. I don't know how long this is going to take, but years. And it's impossible. But that's what's beautiful about it, and that's what's exciting about it, and that's what made me want to do it. The word impossible. So let's do something impossible and something high.
Before we get into the Bloomsday event, I was wondering if you could tell me about you as an artist and your practice, because you have a very interesting and varied career and, crossing so many different mediums. And I think what's really beautiful is that you kind of put yourself in the middle of it, but in this way that's very, very open.
Yeah, I think in college, when I discovered drugs, I think I just was like, oh my God, there's something incredible in my mind that I didn't really.
Which ones? Because
Really
cocaine
just
does not do that.
marijuana. Just when I discovered marijuana, it was like I would have visions, like these beautiful visions in my head that were more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen. And I remember thinking like, where is this coming from? Like, what are these visions and who's having them? And obviously it was me, but I just thought, oh, there is someone there that is having visions that I can't imagine or encompass or normally can't. And so I started, I don't know, I think I just started drawing and then I started making films. Maybe I'd already started making films, but like it just sort of switched. And then I made a bunch of films, mostly experimental films. And then one day I was in film school and I took some LSD and I had another like insight or vision. And it was a vision of the Buddha holding a flower in his hand. And with the vision came a thought, which was the beauty is always right there in front of you. Like you don't have to go looking for it. It's like, it's always there in front of you, but people don't see it. And so it made me want to make films about the ordinary or the everyday or the things that we all experience but don't see. And I think my practice became that, just like trying to see what we don't see, but that we all can see. Kind of like the way drugs make you see things in a new way that you don't normally or wouldn't otherwise. So then I just decided to make a film about a recent crush I'd had on this art student at the school I was at. And she reenacted herself, and she had a boyfriend who reenacted himself. And I reenacted myself, and it came out well. Like, it got into Sundance, and people liked it. I liked it, so it just kind of emboldened me to go down that path. And then I just started making films about my life. Just whatever was happening, I would either reenact it or document it and make it into a film. And I did that, ever since. I just basically tried to tell the story of my life through film. But then I started doing it also in audio and also in writing. But it's basically an ongoing memoir or autobiography or document.
And it's sort of very interesting. And I want to kind of go back and unpack that a little bit as well. So, you begin with this sort of urge to create images and sort of like propelled by that kind of like insatiable need to create an inspiration inspired by the world that exists. And then it's sort of when you share it in some way or form, when you then have it exhibited or have it viewed, did that change your relationship to the art? And how did that affect your relationship to yourself?
Well, I mean, I think it was confirming, or it was encouraging. Like I would show something and people would like it, and I'd be, oh, okay, I'm right, that was good, or that was interesting. Also, I mean, I think when I started making films, it was mostly just to meet women. Really, it was just like and that also kind of worked, and it was just kind of like those two things, just like a social, uh, the social aspect of it, and then the creative aspect. Then it became a spiritual aspect too, because then I started to feel like I was doing something that transcended the self, and that was important for other people. And people will tell me, like, my film meant a lot to them, or changed their lives in some way, and that really, is very encouraging, obviously.
Like, are you really going on your gut instinct of this is that we're getting in a closer direction as you're making it? Do you come up with a plan, a story, an aim? What, like when you're kind of making those early films, yeah, what is your method of working?
I always think of it as like a dowsing rod. Like, like when you look for water. I mean, I've never done it. I've just read about it, but like supposedly the dowsing rod vibrates when you get near the water, right? And for me, like, I get excited by things. Like, if I think about doing a film, there's always like uh, forking paths along it, and some of them just vibrate with more energy or more excitement or more whatever that thing is that gets you like. And I just follow that. It's just like and usually it's whatever is kind of in my life that's sort of most uh, either difficult or challenging, or like really challenges are what I find exciting. So it can be anything, but it's whatever is the most exciting thing to me at that time is what I gravitate towards.
And in terms of then being seen, so when you're creating work, but you yourself are so intrinsically part of the work. Once it's seen, does it change your relationship to the work or to you, your sense of self? Like it's almost like being observed in some ways. Like, is there like I'm kind of trying to be tactful about this, but like what you're describing is very much so you're present, you're in your like you're in your craft. But then there is the thing where like accolades and things, they fuel the ego, and then when you are your work, you're being observed, and then sometimes people don't necessarily, because wherever they are viewing it, they might not necessarily see fully what the intention is because of their experiences. Did that ever like shift your relationship to that? Like, did you ever have to sort of recalibrate after?
I mean, I feel like my purpose in life has been to, and I think everyone has a purpose, and I think everyone's is different. I feel like sometimes like mine is to be attacked and to not care, or to be okay with being attacked, like to practice having my sense of self be more uh, strong than other people's opinions or something. Like to whatever that is, that kind of like self-acceptance or self-affirmation, or like it's challenging. I mean, people attack you when you put work into the world, especially personal work, like I do, and it is hard to process. I mean, it's not like I don't care. I do care, but it's not going to stop me. And I think it's really good. It's good practice. Like it's the muscle of like not caring, or I mean, of not letting that dissuade me, or his my that muscle has gotten stronger with over time from that, and I think that's really good, and it's made me freer. Like I think I'm more free as a person now than I ever been, because of this process of putting work out into the world and watching people, trash it or whatever, and also not trash it, but both things. It's made me it's easier for me to just say the thing that I think and not worry about it, or try to say it in a way that someone else would like it.
Yeah. And kind of, but I mean, that success early on as well, like going to Sundance is a really, really big deal. Like, would that have affected it? Like, did you ever get to a period, like, are you just not a person who does this? Or, would you ever get to the point, because there's so much authenticity in what you're creating and, how you're presenting yourself, that bit of success and that maybe initial bit of being observed, and especially you're much younger, you don't have as strong of a sense of identity yourself. Did that ever sort of kind of slightly corrupt the work, or was that sort of part of it,
I
that
mean, I
it
think it
becomes
always,
performative almost?
yeah. I mean, I think it always threatens to corrupt the work, and I think there's always a dialectic between something being performative or sincere. I mean, I guess those are the two poles of that binary. But my feeling has always been that there's always a performative element in life already. And whether you're talking to a friend or on a date, or to your parents or your kids, there's always some sense in which you're trying to portray a certain idea of the self, where whether it's right or wrong. And we're always in this dialectic. So to me, the filmic dialectic is really not qualitatively different than the normal everyday dialectic. It's really just like we're in relation to each other. It affects how we act, and we try to act as freely and honestly and openly as we can. And I find this process that I've been going in to be really helpful in that. And, I think spiritualizing in that sense as well.
Do you feel like it's a collective unconscious, or does it come from outside? Do you serve a project? Do you see a project as being a separate entity or an extension of yourself as well? It's sort of like, what is your experience in relation to this?
Um, I mean, I believe in God, and I believe that I try to listen to what I'm supposed to do, and I try to follow that. And I find like desire, for me, desire comes from God. Like, why do you desire what you desire? Like, why are you drawn to this and not that? It's a mystery. And I think it's the mystery of self. Like, that's kind of, I think, what makes us different is that we desire differently. And I just trust it. Like like a lot of the Buddhists are against desire. They're like, that's the ego, that's wrong, and you should be desirous. But I don't think that's true. I think desire is holy or spiritual, and I just follow it. I don't know. It's like I feel compelled. I, I can tell when I'm off base because it's not, does it feel right? And I just kind of try to trust. I just try to trust what I'm feeling. I'm not answering that question.
Do you think about it for a while? Do you meditate it? Like, what are the stages of each project as they manifest, or is everything different?
Um, no, it's like you have an idea which excites you, and it's like a dim vision of something beautiful, and you like try to move towards it, and you're like, well, how do I make that happen? And there's a disparity between the vision and the current state or the current ability, and then it's just like, Raymond Roussel, the French writer.
A little.
Well, he did this thing. It was in the 1800s, but he like wrote a sentence that was a pun. Like you could read it two ways. Each word was like a pun. and he decided to write a novel where he'd go from the same sentence to the same sentence, but with a different meaning. And the whole novel was, how do you get from this point to this point? That's what the story was like. Had to invent that. And I feel like that's kind of the process. Like, you know where you want to go, and then you're like, how do I get there? And it's like going on a trip. Like you check the train schedule, and then you like figure out you got to go at this time to here, and then you got to get this person to like give you a ticket or whatever. Like, it's like you just figure it out, and it often takes years. I mean, the Joyce project is going to take many, many years, and my only worry is that I'm going to die before it's done.
Is that not the one that was 30 days in in the description? Was it like
it was 24 hours? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like,
yeah.
But now it's forever.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, I just hope I finish it, but yeah, it's like just you put one foot in front of the other, and you just keep going, and it's just it can be a very, very long journey.
Have there ever been points, that have disappointed you, and have you ever felt, those moments of elated where you're exactly where you're meant to be?
Yeah, it's mostly elation. I mean, you get disappointed. I mean, you talked about like Sundance, and I mean, I think when I was younger, things like that were very exciting and seemed to hold out some kind of promise of, I don't know, glory or fulfillment or plenitude, I guess, salvation. And when you experience it, you're like, this is not salvational at all. Like, I mean, nothing in the world is. So there's a disappointment, but it's also a freedom that comes with that, where it's like, okay, I don't have to chase that mirage, and I can just sort of pursue the ones that actually are fulfilling.
Okay. And the ones do you have projects that were more fulfilling that you got the bigger rewards of than others? Like, what's your favorite child?
My favorite child. I mean, I really love the show about the show. It was the most ambitious in the sense that took 10 years. It's 7.5 hours long. And it just like continually surprised and challenged me at a very deep level. That's the most recent one also. I think the Joyce one is probably my favorite. It's my favorite child now, but it's still in a very early stage.
One of the things as well that you said that was really interesting was, the importance of art, and you talked about it that, that I'm paraphrasing very badly now, but it's that, that like bad art makes you sad because it diminishes the experience of being human. And I really was intrigued by that because, sometimes as a viewer, you feel that, but then also sometimes you connect to things that other people don't connect to at all. And it was just kind of, I wanted to dig into what your like and how you practice is so broad. What is the definition of art? And then what is the definition of bad art? If good art is authenticity and truth and, getting closer to the divine, what's the bad?
I mean, for me, bad art is just either cliches that you're just copying someone else and just saying what's been said already. And I guess for me, good art is original. It's like it's something that you're approaching the world with new eyes, and the world is always new, and we're always new. So like, there's always a new way to look at the new, and there's also an old way to look at the new. And I think most artists are copying other artists, or they're copying, or they have an idea of art that they're imposing on reality, and it's not theirs. It's not original, and it's not the now. It's like most Hollywood cinema is just a repeat of some other thing that was done that maybe worked at the time, and there's just a lack of, I don't know, originality, I think. So for me, it's really that. It's like, is it new in some way? And what I really respond to in films is like, I've never seen that before, and I would never do that. Like I would never think to do that. But if I would think to do that, it's like probably because it's been done, and it's like just part of the way we've sort of been inculcated to think about things. And I mean, a lot of people, they want stuff that they've seen before. Like John Cage said, if there's more than 20% novelty in a work of art, people will reject it. but I like maximal novelty, or I like, as much novel as I can get and still be able to sort of hold on to it. And some people don't. Some people like less novelty in their art. So, everyone's different, and different arts are something that I would find bad or cliched, or someone else would find, very wonderful and inspiring. And, so I don't think it's bad in itself. It's just like, but that is my measure of it for myself. I once was in a bookstore, like a new age bookstore, and there was a book by this Russian guy. It was an old book. And he was saying that music that is kind of like loud or fast or like is like bad for the soul, and music that's like slower and calmer is good for the soul. And I remember thinking, that's ridiculous. Like, you can have music like heavy metal music that can make you really ecstatic depending on where you're coming from. And then music that's really serene can make you really like alienated and bored. Like, it's not about the music. It's about where you are when you encounter it and what it does, how it resonates with you and what your needs are. So I would never blanketly say anything is just bad. I would just say, I might say it's been done or it's full of cliches, but some people respond to those cliches, like and whatever. And I think there's something for everybody, and we don't all need the same things.
There's something sort of embedded, there's a truth embedded in film when it's done earnestly, even if it is not like the perception of good, like, it isn't this like highly advanced thing. Like an example of that is The Room. There's something magic in that. That Tommy Wiseau
Yep.
film, and like people really responded to it, and it's very weird, but it's something that you couldn't fake that. You couldn't
Yeah.
pretend that wasn't true. Are there things in modern, like with that kind of authenticity radar and that kind of like strong draw towards projects, that to be inspired and projects that have that authenticity? Are there things in pop culture that you can feel that attraction to and that understanding from, and there are things that are like kind of push you away that are just cliches?
I mean, I kind of think that art is also seeing the beauty in everything. And so for me, like, the more you can see beauty in anything, the higher the artistic vision you're bringing to it, really. It's like I would say, I would think like God would see the beauty in everyone and in everything, and I really like art that sort of reclaims the banal or the ugly in some sense. So for me, like, pop culture is also a beautiful thing, and it's like it's everyone. I think everyone has a vibrational frequency, and so does music, and so does culture, and it's like you find things that resonate with your vibrational frequency, and in some sense, either calm or enliven your own vibrational frequency. And I don't know. I think it's all beautiful, really. I I would hate to say like, oh, this is bad. I mean, there's certain things that I don't relate to, and
But maybe not bad, if but constructed and not
uh-huh.
of the thing that it's portraying. So, you'd have, say, a pop star and their aesthetic, their sound,
Yeah.
like it's kind of like puppeteers behind them deciding,
Yeah.
like because they know that this will sell on some level, and
Yeah.
there's that like cynicism maybe.
Yeah, you're right. There is I mean, like, people say like there is no truth or something, but there is an asymptotic relationship to truth. I mean, you can lie more or less. You can be more or less honest, and maybe there's such thing as like total honesty. Like, I don't know what that would even look like, but you can certainly say this feels more truthful than this. Like, this film has more authenticity than this one. Like, I mean, I really like, I don't know, I like Daniel Johnston, for example. To me, like, that's just something that has like clear, like, he's not imitating anybody, and he's just like doing his thing, and you can just feel the sincerity of it so deeply.
You've sort of been creating this very earnest work, and the world has gotten meaner. Um, does that push you forward? Are there any days you're sort of, you talked about the vibrational frequencies. Are there any days you're just like overwhelmed by the vitriol as well? Because if you have to be that open and that vulnerable to bring that truth.
Yeah, I mean, there are hours spent processing vitriol. Yes. But I also feel like the more vitriol, the more it means that the work is strong, that it's hitting a nerve. In the show about the show, in the third season, there was an episode that was very controversial. And a lot of people who were big fans would like turn against me over
And
this
what happened
episode.
in it?
It's one of the actresses talks to the camera about her experience and is very, very critical of me, and it's unfair because she's leaving out very huge swaths of truth. But a lot of people were like, you got to like respond to this. Like, it sounds like you're a horrible person. And I'm like, well, it's interesting to not respond to it artistically. And it's unfair to respond to it because no one else gets to respond to what I say about them. So it would be kind of hypocritical and double standard. And why not let the audience just process it and grapple with what she's saying and not spoon feed them a thing? And it was a very bold thing to do, in that very few people would put in a film of theirs something that makes them look really bad. But for that very reason, to me, it seemed really interesting. And it's gotten a lot of vitriol. And but I'm also really proud of it. Like, to me, like, that's the best episode because it just pisses people off so much. And I know what happened. Like, I don't feel like I did anything wrong, but except to not defend myself, But I don't think that's wrong, but that's the thing that is causing the vitriol. But I'd rather have the vitriol and feel that the artistic, whatever it is as an object artistically, is so much better despite the vitriol.
Does sharing work for the first time, especially, or like so consistently, um, is there a moment of like fear or joy or excitement before you kind of sit down in that cinema for the first time? Um, what's your general feeling?
Yeah, it's usually fear and insecurity. Like, I haven't really shown the Ulysses film, or at least this first episode. I mean, it's not done. I'm still working on it, right now. So I have this, you always have this fear, like, is it terrible? Like, am I completely delusional? Like, am I just barking up the wrong tree here? Like, until an audience sort of says, no, you're not, it's easy to wonder. So yeah, there's always fear. The fear used to be more paralyzing when I was younger. I remember when I first screened I'm a Sex Addict publicly, it was also a work in progress. I couldn't speak. I mean, I was like, not just tongue tied, I was frozen with terror. It was a bodily thing. I couldn't, like, I was like catatonic. I don't think I will be on this one, but you never know. But yeah, definitely fear and insecurity. Yes.
And then, okay, so like, let's go into this. Tell me about how the idea came.
To
Where,
Joyce?
yeah, yeah.
Well, I had the idea when I first read Joyce in college. I was like, I want to make a film of this. And it was just because I had this idea then, which in a way was correct, but it was just that you can learn from other artists by trying to just like, yeah, you can learn from other artists, really, is the idea. And I was like, Joyce obviously had something going on that was very, very impressive. And I was like, how do I learn from him? And I was just like, well, how can you make a film that does to cinema what Joyce does to literature? That was really the whole problematic and challenge of that project. And it's not obvious, but it's an interesting question. Like, what is he doing exactly with the history of English, with the form, and how do we translate that into film in a way that actually works? Because the two adaptations that have been made, they don't really work. Like, it was a ill-conceived adaptations, I think. So I just thought about it for 40 years, I think, more, 45 years. And after like 20 years, I had one idea that was a good idea, which was to make it episodic and to make each chapter a different episode. Like, I didn't think of that for a long time. And then when I thought of that, like, it opened up a whole new way of doing it, which made a lot more sense. And then my second idea was, which again was a problem. Like, most people haven't read Ulysses. And so if you adapt it and you're doing things to it, just like he does stuff to the Odyssey, like, people aren't going to know what you're doing because they don't know the book well enough to see, like, oh, this is a reference to the moment where Leopold Bloom was walking along the bridge. Like, they wouldn't. So it would lose a lot of its power, which is its, illusion. Its illusion layer would be gone. So it was like, how do you get people to understand the adaptation? And then I had an idea, which was, again, maybe after 10 years, which was, if you do a play of Ulysses and you put that in the movie, that people will see the play of Ulysses, and they'll know what Ulysses is from the play. And then when you reference those things from the book, they'll understand that it's a reference to the book, and so that opened up a whole new way to do it. Like, it opened it up, like, oh, I can do it now. And then it was just like, how do I pull it off logistically? And I tried to get money for it. I couldn't get any. No one cares about Ulysses, frankly, at least not here. And then it was the anniversary. It was the 100-year anniversary. And I just thought, oh, this would have been the perfect year to do it, just for motivation purposes and not always just putting it off forever. And so I just thought, I had this conversation with my producer, and she said, why don't you just do it now? And I just said, it's too late. I don't have time. And she said, well, maybe you do. And I just, that one thought, and maybe I do, made me do it. And then I just, rose to the occasion, or tried to rise to the occasion.
And then tell me, for anyone who has no clue what your work is about, tell me then, like, what does that look like for you? Like, from a complete outsider, like someone who's kind of like washed up on the shore and is totally new to this, what will they see, hear, experience as they watch this?
The Ulysses project. I mean, the first episode is the introduction to the whole series, and it's really me talking about why I'm doing this, what it is, and setting up some of the vocabulary of the film and some of the what's at stake, and why I think it's important and worth doing. But it's really just like a 45-minute prologue at the moment to the actual film, which hasn't started yet, which will be started the next episode. So it's like a prelude or a prologue. I call it an overture because it's like they're like motifs, like almost like musical motifs that get set up to sort of start to teach the viewer how to read this text, which is complex.
And then tell me about how the connection to the festival happened and your trip over here, and what people who might go see it will see.
Well, I had a bunch of people working on the play and on the film. I had like 50 crew people, and some people. I also had people record the news. One of the chapters in Ulysses is kind of about journalism, and the news of the day in 1904 Dublin is like a big part of the book. So I wanted to record the news of the day in 2022 on Bloomsday, and I did. So I had somebody record the news in different countries, so we could intersperse what's happening in the world with what's happening in New York on that day, in the movie of the adaptation. And the guy who recorded the news just emailed me one day and said, "Did you know there was a Bloomsday Film Festival in Ireland?" And I was like, "No, I didn't know that." And he said, "Here's a link." And so I was like, "Oh my God, that seems like the perfect fit, obviously." So I reached out, and Tommy was like, "Well, we really mostly just do shorts." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm adapting the whole thing. It's like 24 hours long." He said, "Well, we don't have the capacity for that." And I was like, well, can I just show the first episode or something? And he was like, well, it's kind of late. I don't know. And it took a while. And he said, send me some shorts. I was like, well, it's not like that. But I think it took him a while to understand what it was and to kind of wrap his head around it. It also took me a while to sort of get the pieces together to have something, coherent to show. But that was maybe, I don't know, it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But we've been in kind of sporadic communication. And then this time I'm like, can I screen the first episode this year? And he said, sure, this will work.
Could this be a regular deadline? Do you work
I hope
better
so.
with
I would
deadlines?
like to do one every year until it's done. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's so much fun, and I think if you haven't been, have you been to the festival on other years?
No, no.
Yeah, it's great. So
Yeah.
people get really into it. They dress up, the
Uh-huh.
performers, like there's such a buzz, and there is so much good has been born of it for so long. Like it is lovely. Like it's so much nicer than St. Patrick's Day as a day to celebrate, our history and our kind of legacy in the world. I mean, one would argue drinking and Catholicism are not the best things for the Irish people. I don't know
Yeah.
why those two things melded together on a day. People thought, yeah, that's branding. But yeah, that it's something that sort of is like Mam's, like whimsical and magical that goes in. So I hope you'll really enjoy it. And yeah, but when people are quite like passionate about it as well. Are you going to present the work? Are you going to chat about it before?
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to present it. I'm going to give a talk about it as well because I just think it's interesting to think about the text, more specifically, and how film is different and what it can and can't do, and there are things that the film can do that literature can't. I mean, yeah, and adapting Ulysses, there are certain advantages to the cinematic form that Joyce didn't have, and then there's certain disadvantages, and I just think it's interesting to look at that. So yeah, there's the film, and then there's a talk, and so, discussion.
And have you adapted other people's work much before?
No, I don't think I ever have.
Does that change your relationship to it? But so I suppose it's like almost collaboration then, or you see the subject matter in a different way, or bring that lens to it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that my films all have is that they're telling the story of me, and so it's really about me more than about Joyce on some level. But the thing about Ulysses, it's about Joyce. I mean, it's an incredibly autobiographical text, and I think more than people realize. And so for me, it's like grounding it in his autobiography is part of the film, but also grounding the film in my autobiography is also part of the film. Like it's really about the challenge of trying to adapt Ulysses and what that means for me personally is really kind of what the film is. It's a a document of a day in my life, but it's also a document of my entire life at the same time through that day, which is what Ulysses is, as well for Joyce. So, I mean, really, it's it's trying to push the envelope of the medium through the lens of how Joyce did it. And I'm also doing a film about Joseph Cornell, which is also similar in that it's trying to learn from him. Like he's got something I don't have. Like he has a sense of graphic design and of objects and of space that I don't. And so for me, that film is also like, how do I learn this thing from him, and how to make a film that's commensurate with his work about him. And I think this is a film that is trying to be commensurate with Joyce's work. It's a film about Joyce that's commensurate with Joyce, but it's also about me, and it's through my life. It's hard to explain, but it's a weird melding of the two things.
And as something that is sort of like this work in progress and quite a substantial mountain ahead, where are you now? Is there anything that sort of came up that surprised you in that space?
Well, I really like challenges. I used to like puzzles when I was a kid. Like the more pieces of the puzzle, the more exciting the puzzle, like, or the more a sense of accomplishment in the puzzle. And I think of this film as like a really, really hard puzzle, like maybe the hardest puzzle anyone's ever made. Like it's just like an insanely difficult problem to solve. Uh, and and it's beyond my ability. Like, I mean, it's beyond my current ability. Like I have to grow quite a bit. So it's very, it's the most challenging thing I've ever done because it's the hardest. And I feel like I'm not that good a filmmaker yet to know how to pull it off, but I trust that I will become that filmmaker. It's like, if you want to walk from New York to California, you can develop muscles that you didn't already have, like you're going to end up a much stronger walker when you get there. But you become stronger, one step at a time. And I just know that the filmmaker who finishes this film is going to be a much better filmmaker than the filmmaker who started it. And I would like to become that filmmaker.
And what would you hope, or do you not want to spoil it and let people have their own interpretation of it, or could be broader? What would you hope people get from watching it, or that they take away?
Well, I hope they're excited by the possibilities of the medium. And I hope that they are excited to go back to Joyce. And, that text is inexhaustible. Like, there's just so much there. And I hope they're excited by, yeah, just the possibilities of artistic expression. Like that's what's exciting about Joyce. Like you're like, oh my God, somebody thought to do it this way. And it's just like, it's mind blowing. And it's so exciting and inspiring. So basically, I want people to get what I get from reading Joyce, like excitement, inspiration, and just awe, really.
Lovely. So thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank
We
you.
hope you enjoy Ireland and have a lovely, lovely festival. We'll see you there, and I'll make sure to put the link to the event in the description.
Okay, thank you. It was nice talking to you.